Welcome everybody to the 2026 TeacherMatic Spring Webinar. Today's webinar, certainly welcome to you all. I've already asked you to do introductions, so if you haven't introduced yourselves yet and you're happy to do so, please do introduce yourself in the chat. So the ground rules today, we are recording this webinar, so be aware of that. And we will send out recordings of the webinar to everyone who's registered for it later on. So I'm just going to show you quickly today's agenda. So hopefully you're seeing that. So starting off with this welcome from myself, and then I will be handing over in a few minutes to my colleagues Oliver and Richard, who will be going through some technical updates, some new generators and some new functionality on the platform. And then after that, we're going to be joined by Tom Mull from Jisc and Pete Salter, I think I've already seen is here, from West Notts College. And we're going to be talking about the Jisc assessment project. It's a project with about 15 colleges and universities who are testing in detail TeacherMatic's assessment tools. And we're going to be sharing some insights and some lessons learned from that. So we're about halfway through. And in addition to that, we are going to be giving you a look at the new advanced feedback generator, which has very much come out of this Jisc assessment project, the lessons that we've learned from it, and I will be demonstrating that. And it was made live about a week ago, so some of you will have already perhaps had a go at using that and seeing what it can do. After that, I will be handing over to Jax Weeks, and Jax has been working with my colleague Richard on building a fabulous new coaching generator. Jax is a real national expert in coaching young people and done some big improvements on our coaching generator option. So we're going to be looking at that. And then my colleague Ian Johnson from Avallain. Avallain are the company that acquired TeacherMatic about a year and a half ago. Actually, nearly 2 years ago now. And Ian will be talking about some products in the Avallain family that you can use in complement to TeacherMatic. So you'll be able to see some of these. And at the end of all that, we are just over 3 years old. We had our third birthday in terms of when we launched TeacherMatic about a month ago. So we've been going live as a product for just over 3 years. And Esam, one of the four founders of TeacherMatic, is going to be just looking at some of the highlights of the journey over those last 3 years, from when we launched it to how we've got to where we are now. Okay, so that's today's agenda. And I'm now going to hand over to my colleagues Richard and Ollie, who will talk about some of the technical updates on TeacherMatic.
Thanks, Peter. I'll start us off. Okay, so hello everyone. It's good to see so many familiar names. I'll be starting off with the platform updates, the recent things that the development team have done in TeacherMatic. Then I'll pass you over to Richard, who'll talk about some of the more generator-specific things that have happened. So I promised Peter I wouldn't talk about it too much. He'll be talking about it later on in the conference, but a big focus for us over the last 3 months has been advanced feedback and all the things that have kind of gone into it. So we've spent the last month or so beginning to implement some of the feedback that's come back from various people who have been trialing it. And we've ticked off quite a few things, but then there are a few follow-on features which we're going to add over the next couple of months too. So that includes some admin controls. This has been asked for quite a lot. And this is where admins can force human in the loop marking. So there'll be several levels of this, but at the lowest level, admins will be able to ensure that all of their teachers confirm a policy or acknowledge some organization policy related to using AI for marking. And at higher levels, they'll be able to force certain numbers of edits within the marking system. Beyond that, we're also adding comparative feedback. So this will be similar to the comparative feedback generator we have. So we're going to be bringing that into advanced feedback, and it'll be able to identify common trends, common shortcomings within student assignments, and that kind of thing. Another recent addition is the ability for TeacherMatic to remember files and also store recent files. So we're beginning to implement this in places where it makes sense for the file to be remembered. For example, an assignment brief in especially the old feedback generator, where you may want to submit, upload assignment after assignment against the same brief. So now you don't need to keep re-uploading the same brief over and over again. We've also got the recent files functionality, which lets you go back and select files that you've uploaded recently. Next, I should mention the Moodle plugin. So this has been out for a while, but it's now compatible with the very latest version of Moodle. That's available via moodle.org. And as I've said before, please do go ahead and visit our integrations page. All of our integrations are detailed there, along with guides on getting things like LTI set up and the types of file format that we support. And finally, or maybe not finally, but we've also added some functionality recently to the organization admin dashboard, which allows you to view your all of your users and the total number of generations over a period of time. So it's, in addition to the last access date, this really enables people to identify active users and the kind of pioneers of TeacherMatic as well. We've also made some improvements to the maximize and minimize functionality. So now when you minimize generators, we retain all of the fields and the output from the generator at the point in which you minimized it. Okay, so that was quite a short list, and that's because we've been doing a lot in the back end to give Richard the tools he needs to develop the generators, and also related to integrations and functionality in the advanced feedback generator. So coming up soon, we've got some additional functionality being built into the advanced feedback generator. We've also got an enormous job to kind of modernize the TeacherMatic UI. So we're in the design phase at the moment, but we're looking to implement that over the next couple of months. And that will give TeacherMatic a clean look, a fresh look, and also make navigating generators a little bit easier as well. Beyond that, we're also going to tackle the structure and consistency of all of our generator forms. So we're going to make them a little bit easier to use and also follow a simpler and more structured format as well. And finally, we're going to look at the export formatting and bring in loads of improvements to standardize the quality of Word exports and PDF exports. Okay, that's it from me. So let me know if you've got any questions. I'll keep an eye on the chat and pass you over to Richard.
Thank you, Ollie, and good afternoon, everyone. I haven't got too much for you this afternoon. I'm glad to say that you can have a rest from my usual list of new generators. We've been looking at a few areas in particular. As Ollie said, feedback has been taking quite a lot of our time, and Peter will be talking more about the advanced feedback module later on today. But one area of feedback that we've been asked about before is what's sometimes called CASLO. What's CASLO stand for? Criterion, Reference, and Tightly Specified Learning Outcomes. In other words, essentially, assessment by portfolio, where the student uploads an ongoing or a completed portfolio per unit or for a whole course, where the specification of the course or the specification for the unit is the thing to be compared with, and what the student has done is to be assessed against, usually against learning outcomes, and within those learning outcomes, the assessment criteria that have been set by the awarding body or by yourselves or whoever is working on this. An associated area is portfolio marking for apprenticeships, where apprentices have to produce a portfolio which aligns with either an example portfolio that's been completed or a portfolio template. So we've been looking at both of these, and both are in development. And really, I'm here this afternoon to look for collaborators. We're looking for people to work with us on both these types of portfolio marking, portfolio-based marking, so that we can actually meet everybody's needs. CASLO, portfolio-based marking, is fairly common in quite a lot of vocational teaching and learning, health and social care. I myself taught on PGC Cert Ed years ago, and we used portfolio-based marking for that. Business, sport, public services, hair and beauty, that sort of course. Also art and design and performance, of course, quite a lot of portfolio work in those. And it tends to be for a number of different quals. I think the most common qualification type would be the MVQs, and nowadays perhaps for in further education T levels, where they're being taught in other technical qualifications, and foundation degrees also are often portfolio based. So as I say, we've been looking at that particular area, and what I'm going to do is very briefly share with you where we are. But as I said, most of what I'm trying to do today is find people who might like to work with us, because we like to get these things as right as we can. So if I may, I'll share my screen, if I can find my share button. I'll share the entire screen, which might mean some echoing for the time being, but we should
Richard,
be able now.
just jumping in briefly, you've
Yeah,
got
sorry.
15 minutes, so you don't have to be as brief as you maybe were thinking. You've got 15 minutes before the next slot.
Okie dokie. Thank you very much. What I'll do is, if I can get back to that screen without all the junk on the top from Zoom, put that over there. Let's have a look. Well, here are the two portfolio systems that we're working on. I'll go into the main portfolio feedback system first of all, the CASLO system, which, as I said, looks at a whole course specification or the specification for a specific unit, and it looks at what the student has uploaded and compares the two to see how well the student is doing. This form of assessment is used in an organisation which happens to be run by my son, who is one of our collaborators on this, running forest school courses for forest school teachers. I'm not using his stuff as one of the examples, but it has been a very useful learning process for me, because I haven't personally taught on portfolio-based courses. So what we did was we went through what the well, first of all, we went through the requirements of the Joint Council on Qualifications, JCQ, looking at what they suggest these days. As you probably know, their advice on assessment has changed to some extent recently. It's worth looking at their latest guidance. But essentially, in portfolio marking, the ruling at the moment, as far as we can see, is that you can use AI for portfolio feedback to help the learners improve their work, but final summative assessment must be done by including in that assessment the human element, which is something that Ollie was talking about earlier on, where we're making this an administrative point so that you, as an administrator of TeacherMatic in an organization, can fix what the rules are for your particular organization's use of AI in feedback. In the portfolio one that we're developing at the moment, it's quite a simple way of doing it, and I'll show you that in a moment. So I'm going to I've got hairdressing on there at the moment. I'm going to actually put a cert ed. I've got a unit of a cert ed course, which is to do with the role of the teacher. Many of you will have done this in the past, I'm sure. So the role of the teacher, so it's a single unit. We can do an entire course if you want to, the course specification. I'm going to not summarize the submitted text, and I'll show you what that means in a moment. So I'm going to upload the specification. Let's see if I can find it easily. Here we go. So it's a unit 31, level 3, understanding roles, responsibilities, and relationships in education and training. And I've got some sample student work here for that. So I've got two options. I'm going to upload, first of all, I'm going to upload this one. And I'm going to say, no, I don't want to suggest a grade. If I suggest a grade, I get a warning that any suggested grade is only to be used to help offer feedback to the student. It is not intended as, nor is it to be used as summative grading. Any final grading must be fully reviewed and set by the tutor. This warning will be settable by you as administrators of the TeacherMatic, or by your administrator of the TeacherMatic system within your organization. So whatever rules you have set will be popping up here. If summative marking can be done by AI, then you can say so. But at the moment, I'm not going to suggest a grade. I'm just going to ask the system to generate some feedback based on the fact that it's got the base document, which is the unit specification, and it's got the work that's been uploaded by the student. We have a short hiatus while you all take a sip of your tea. And I've finished mine, unfortunately, while we wait for the generator to do quite a complex piece of work, but we shouldn't be very long. So hold on, here we go. By the way, I should say that we're also, and Ollie did refer to this briefly, we're also standardizing the layout of the reports from TeacherMatic. They've been somewhat disparate in the past as things have just grown like Topsy. So what you're seeing now is much more a formal setting out of how things look. And the other thing we're adding in is the ability to do something extra, which I'll show you in a moment. So here we are. This is the feedback on the portfolio. The submitted work provides a detailed exploration of the roles and so on. So just a summary of what's been uploaded. And then for every learning outcome, each of the assessment criteria and how well that's been met. A very useful functionality. And then a summary. And because we haven't asked it for a suggested grade, it hasn't given us one. But I will now run it again with a suggested grade, a reminder of that warning, just to show you what that will do. I've got a set of grades that I've put in: pass, near pass, and referral. I know that near pass is unusual, but sometimes if you're giving feedback to a student, it can actually be quite useful to be able to say, look, you nearly got there, but just do a little bit of work rather than a full referral. That's just a personal opinion. But here we go. Here is the one where we said suggested grade, and in this case, it suggested a pass. I said I was going to show you an extra that we're putting into many of our generators, and that is this: the ability to edit any part of the result. So if I feel here that the feedback says you have clearly explained the multifaceted nature of the teaching role, including blah, 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 this explanation meets the criterion effectively, but I might want to say you could add something about, let's say, SEND, whatever I want to put in there. I can save that so I can live edit my feedback as I go. I don't have to wait and export it anymore to a Word document to edit. It can all be done here. So as you can see, that's a new function. We've got a suggested grade of pass. Let's just try one further upload. I'll try one that I know is not particularly good. By the way, these are obviously anonymized pieces of work that we're using here, although the unit spec is a genuine unit spec. So again, if we just wait for a few moments, you can, by the way, as I'm waiting here, you can state your own grading system. So if you don't want near pass, for example, in there, well, pass and referral, or you might want, as it suggests here, excellent, good, fair, poor, or in some cases, excellent, good, fail, whatever you particularly want. So here we have the version for somebody who really hasn't done very well. And let's have a look what it says about this one. It's a referral. You've provided basic overview, but responses lack depth and so on and so on. Again, we can edit those as we wish. So that's the design as it is at the moment of the portfolio feedback system. There's one other option, which is to add in, and I'll put this in as well. We can add in a little bit extra. We can actually show the student submitted work and the mark and the reasoning, the feedback that's gone alongside that. When I do this, it will take a moment longer to do. I need to upload a file because it's a slightly larger job. So if I can think of something else to say while I'm doing that, I will do so. If not, I will sit in silence. I don't think there's anything to add, except to say this is, as it says at the top, early beta development. We know that there is more that we can add that will help you. And this is why we really need collaborators. Anybody interested in this, this is my contact details. I'll put those into the chat later on when I've got access to the chat, when I've finished working. Please, if you're interested in working with us on this or on apprenticeship, where we're developing apprenticeship tracking and apprenticeship portfolios, we'd love to hear from you. So in fact, that hasn't done what I've asked it to do, and that's because it's in beta mode. So I didn't test this, and I didn't build it before I came on air, so to speak. I apologize for that. But basically what should happen once this is finished correctly is there'll be an extra column in here which will show you what the student actually uploaded. I'll try one very quickly just to see if I can make it work, and then I'll be finishing and handing over. So let's see, we've got this one is, so in this case, I'm doing one on hairdressing. So let's upload a hairdressing based document dealing with customer needs and upload a file to go with that. So I've asked it to give us details what's in there. I won't suggest a grade. Let's see if that will work. Apologies for the slight delay there. Whilst that is going on, I will quickly, I'll mention the other portfolio one while that one's loading. So the portfolio apprenticeship checker basically says, okay, here is an apprenticeship area. Here is the base document, which is an exemplar portfolio, one that's already been created. And I can dig that out over here. Let's say I can pull in, there's an exemplar. I can pull in the student, which is this one. It's simple to use. I'll go back to the other portfolio where I am. And in fact, this one has worked properly. This is what it should have done. It's showing us, let's widen it out. It's showing us the learning outcome, the assessment criterion, what the student submitted. This is the wording that the student put up, and this is our feedback on that wording. So it just adds that extra ability to do what we want it to do. I'm still working on that with my colleagues, and as you can see, there are some errors down here, but that will all be sorted out. So that's the portfolio feedback generator. Close that one down.
Okay, Richard, we've got a few questions if you're ready to take. So the first one, I think,
let me just finish this one, Peter. Sorry, but this is from the apprenticeship portfolio checker, where the base document is asking for things, and it tells you whether the apprentice's evidence has met the requirement on the template. So in this case, for example, the apprentice has admitted details on the use of an 18mm spade drill bit to drill radiator access holes upstairs. I have to confess, I'd have probably omitted that as well, ladies and gentlemen, but there you go. Right, thank you, Peter. I'll stop sharing and I'm back with you.
Sorry to jump in there before you finish.
No problem.
Okay, so a few questions and a number of volunteers, Richard, and I've put your email address into the chat.
Thank you.
So firstly, and Ollie, you might want to take this question. This is from Teresa. The data we input to TeacherMatic, how is it stored? Who does it benefit? So, Ollie, do you want to just sort of reassure Teresa regarding any concerns there?
Yeah, I was just typing up a reply actually. I'll put a few links in the chat, Teresa. But in short, the data that you input into TeacherMatic isn't used to train any models. It's purely used to inform the outputs that TeacherMatic produces.
Okay, thanks very much. And Richard, this is definitely one for you. David Haggath asking, what's the difference between this and the assignment feedback?
An assignment is a single task for a student, which has been set as an assignment. What your job, Mr. Student, Mrs. Student, is to do the following, and the student will then upload their essay, their dissertation in answer to that assignment. The portfolio system says, here is the unit. We are judging what you have done in a portfolio against the unit. They are just simply different ways of marking. So one, the standard feedback and the advanced feedback both take an assignment that has been set, and they look at how the student has responded to that. That does not take every learning out. You could put learning outcomes into an assignment and assessment criteria, but the generator is not designed to specifically take each of those and feedback against each of those. The portfolio generator is specifically for that purpose.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And Tony Bamber is asking, a lot of our art design and media students create their portfolio work on Wix.com or blogs. How do you assess this when it is not Word or PDF?
The answer on that one is I'm working on it. Ollie and I have been working for some time on accepting full image data, and I'll bring in Ollie if we like. But we're there on a lot of things. We can now accept images within submissions. Having said that, it is absolutely right that art and design and performance and areas of that ilk, and not only at level 3, but level 4, 5, 6, and upwards, use a lot of image in portfolios. We cannot at the moment, with the portfolio tool as it is, which by the way was only written this week. I mean, this really is brand new. We cannot accept graphical or a lot of graphical input at the moment. We will be working on it. Ollie, have you got anything more to say on that?
No, that's it really, Richard. I mean, as you said, we already support this in assignment submissions when you select a graphical or handwritten assignment, and we're looking to bring that into other scenarios as well.
Yep.
Okay.
It's there for the future.
Right. Thank you so much to Richard and Ollie for that. I hope you all found that interesting. I've added Richard's email address a couple of times, and I've seen a number of you have volunteered to be interested. If you could email Richard to let him know, and he will then follow up with you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next part of the agenda, which is a sort of interim report, lessons learned from the Jisc assessment pilot. So if I could invite Tom, who has become a close colleague over the last 6 months or so, working very closely with Tom on this. And Tom's going to kick this session off with some initial lessons learned from the Jisc perspective. Okay,
Brilliant.
Tom, are you able to share?
Absolutely. Thanks very much for that, Peter, and thanks, Richard. Glad to have caught that bit. That sounded really interesting as well. So, as Peter said, we've been piloting TeacherMatic at Jisc now since the beginning of this academic year. So we're past the halfway point now and starting to develop some really useful insights, both about TeacherMatic's role in supporting marking and feedback, and also more broadly AI's role within this context. We haven't completed our formal evaluations yet, which will involve surveys and focus group sessions with all of our participants and the students whose work has been marked. But we have been having regular cohort sessions on a fortnightly basis. There's been a lot of, we've been collecting insight forms on a regular basis as well. So we've got quite a good sense of how things are going, what insights are being gathered, and are keen to share those as they'll be important for yourselves, for those who are considering using TeacherMatic in this context, or who might have other ideas around how AI could support in marking and feedback. So the project, as I mentioned, is about how can AI support in marking and feedback. And the rationale for this is that one of AI's big promises is around enhanced productivity. And this is across the board, not just looking at education. This is one of the main kind of benefits that people are expecting to get from the use of artificial intelligence. Added to that, we know that marking and feedback contributes significantly to educators' workload. And we also know, separately but related, that the National Student Survey consistently highlight the quality, consistency, timeliness, and level of feedback as an area for improvement among students. And so, based on these factors, we really wanted to explore and see, is AI something that can really help solve problems that are being experienced in the area of marking and feedback? We'd previously had a successful pilot with TeacherMatic, where we had seen and found evidence of time savings from the other generators. At the time that the pilot was being envisaged, the feedback generator was in its infancy, was starting to get some use, and we really wanted to look at that as one of the products that we wanted to trial. So a little bit more about the pilot overall. So the key question on our mind was understanding AI's impact on the workload around marking and feedback. Does AI save time here? And if so, how much, under what conditions? But we realized very soon that question alone doesn't really quite capture the realities of the marking and feedback process and the introduction of new technologies and the process of change and innovation. What we really wanted to understand is how acceptable different stakeholders would find this application of AI, and how they would respond to the pilot, and whether their views would change as a result of seeing AI in action. We also, as part of the pilot, want to have an understanding of TeacherMatic's role as a product, as well as the overall use case of AI in marking and feedback. And here we're looking at things like the user experience, which the feedback on has been very positive around TeacherMatic. The customer service, again, very positive, and as well as the AI features and how that's harnessed. So I'll just talk through some of the key insights, I think, and then hand over to Peter to talk a bit more about those. So one of the things that we've found is that very much there's a people erring on the side of using AI, using TeacherMatic as part of the pilot for formative assessment as opposed to summative assessment. And in a way, that's quite an obvious direction that people would go in, because there's inherently less risk involved in informative assessment compared to summative assessment. There's less implications in terms of regulations, assurances to the awarding bodies and in institutions where they are one and the same thing. But I think it's also because it comes down to the question of, well, we want to ensure, and I think from a regulatory, from a legal, from a moral point of view, an ethical point of view as well, that human expert remains at the heart of marking and feedback. But we also want to see if there can be any time savings involved as well in that. And that's quite difficult because there's quite a tension between the two. The more time you spend providing oversight as a person, reviewing the feedback from the AI, reviewing the piece of work, the less likely you are to save significant chunks of time. That said, in the space of formative assessment, it's interesting to see different kind of workflows and how they can develop. Some of the examples, and one of the things that we've seen, is that people saying, well, we weren't really able to offer a kind of a feedback on the first draft of a student's work. But we are now, because we've got these tools, it's now manageable, it is now can become part of the provision. I think that's one of the really positive things that we're seeing, is when essentially a student is getting more input into their overall learning journey because these AI tools are enhancing and facilitating that because of the increased productivity. A really interesting point. So I mentioned in the previous slide, one of the big questions in our mind was workload. Will AI reduce workload? One of the things that we're finding is that this, and actually, again, it is something that you might think sort of a priori could have been realized, but you might think that that isn't really the way to hook and to persuade students because in HE spaces, students very much think that they've paid for their teacher's time. They shouldn't be reducing the workload and the time that they're spending on their work. We're finding in other contexts as well that that's not really high up on students' agenda is around workload reduction. And it's interesting. So I was a teacher, and around 10 years ago, when a lot of the kind of the news and the hype was around the recruitment and retention crises, and teacher workload was something that was kind of mentioned just all the time, really, and particularly when the conversation moved to the role of technology in education. But I think that there are different sets of circumstances at the moment across the sector, and workload isn't always the kind of the primary consideration for people. It's a very important one still, but there are other factors as well that we need to think about and rationalize the use of AI against, which brings me on to our next point about the broader benefits of AI. And these are things that we're seeing are really positive points coming out of people's experiences with TeacherMatic. So around consistency of marking, there's a real question there about where there is an element of subjectivity amongst human markers. We see variation. This can obviously cause a certain level of consternation amongst students, and AI is generally very good in terms of the consistency. What we're finding is it's not a non-zero variance. The same piece of work marked multiple times is likely to get slightly different results, but not big sort of inconsistencies that would cause significant worry. Volume of feedback and the richness of feedback as well, and the number of discrete feedback episodes are things that can be increased with the use of AI, and we're very much seeing that in the pilot. And also the timeliness of feedback. If AI is reducing the workload involved, we are seeing one of the corollaries of that is rather than it taking, let's say, 2 weeks, it could take 1 week, and that can be very advantageous for a student to get their feedback when their thinking around something is more fresh in their mind. We have found, and the background to point number 4 is that as well as there being a lot of enthusiasm for artificial intelligence, or at least interest in artificial intelligence, we are seeing more and more that some people have, I think, a sort of impulsive aversion to artificial intelligence, and this is often the case in among students who are aware of, for instance, adverse environmental impacts, issues around intellectual property, issues around AI's impact on the workplace that they will be going into in a very short amount of time. And this, I think, means that emotions are perhaps higher than they would have been. And I think one of the things that we found is it's very important when communicating that AI is going to be used for marking and feedback is being very clear about that, being very direct about how it is being used, making sure that people understand the constraints, the limitations, have a sort of procedural understanding of how that is going to work. And also that there is that direct communication with the educators that are going to be the ones using the artificial intelligence. And I was in a meeting just earlier today, and our discussion kept coming back to the importance of those sort of conversations with students, where, for instance, it can become clear that often teachers and students are in the same boat. There's a certain level of uncertainty. They are exploring the applications of AI. They don't have all the answers yet, but they have hypotheses. They have ways of testing those. And that clarity, I think, and that humility, I suppose, is I think really important there. The importance of workflows is something that's really come out of the pilot as well. And one of the really interesting developments that we've had during the pilot with TeacherMatic, and I'm sure Peter can to look at this in more detail, is around the advanced feedback generator. So one of the things people were saying about the feedback generator was it works really well when you've got one script to mark, but if you've got 30, there's a very repetitive process of going in, setting it back up again, putting in your various settings and configuring the the starting point before you hit mark and give feedback. With the advanced feedback generator, that isn't happening now, and you've got that opportunity for the annotation as well. So I think people have been really pleased with how receptive Peter and the team have been around that. And yeah, with the development of a new feature based on feedback. So those are my overall insights there. Please do let me know in the chat if you have any questions about that.
Thank you very much, Tom. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, so I'm just going to cover initially some of my own kind of perceptions on the lessons learned from this, some of which might slightly overlap with Tom, but there are some very different ones as well. So I think one key insight I'd want to share that if you are looking, we've now got this amazing advanced feedback generator that we're going to be demonstrating shortly. And if you're looking to start to implement AI for feedback and marking across your organization, there are some conversations that you need to be having at an organizational level, perhaps getting a working group together, involving senior managers, quality, curriculum managers, and some teachers and some students. And some of the things that you need to think about, permissions, firstly, I think it's very important that you are transparent, that you're using AI as part of the feedback process. And you should be possibly collecting permissions from students. And the ways that some of the organisations in the pilot are looking at doing this are on things like enrolment forms or on learner agreements that you do at the start of the year to capture those permissions, and so you can say that the students have given the college or university or school permission that you need to be looking at your whole assessment policies, the procedures and the workflows involved, and there will be some planning involved to do all of this. So, the key thing I'm saying is that if you're looking to do this at an organisational level, you need to get a planning group together to think about how you're going to do that, how you're going to capture the permissions, what your policies are going to be, etc. Something else that I found very interesting is the sort of the attitudes to AI in assessment, and Tom certainly alluded to this in terms of how controversial it can be with some people. Firstly, the awarding bodies. Now, in general, the awarding bodies typically say something along the lines that they're okay with AI being used in the assessment process, as long as it's not AI only and as long as that it's AI plus human. But you do need to be aware that there are differences from awarding body to awarding body. So you need to keep a careful idea on that. Conversations that I've had with senior leaders have been quite mixed, some of whom are very keen to embrace this, and they can looking at things like staff well-being, staff workloads, and lifting a little bit of work from staff in terms of AI supporting the assessment process. Whereas one or two senior leaders have been, quite concerned about this and worried that some staff, and I really wouldn't agree with this myself, might be lazy. Now, no lazy person comes into FE to teach because it's just not a lazy person's job. But there are concerns that people might, use this to just get away from doing work and not look at the assignments at all. And so that certainly is a concern that some people do need to be assured of and addressed. In terms of teachers and academics, it's quite mixed. It's a proper Marmite type issue. I know my colleague Isam, when he was talking to, I think, 200 or 300 people in one college, and asked them this question, it was pretty much 50-50 divided, that some were very keen to embrace AI for assessment, and some were still very resistant. My own view, that I think as people understand more and more how it works and understand the benefits, that will shift over time. But it's certainly something that not all teaching staff are embracing willingly at the moment. And finally, students, and as Tom has said, there are some concerns that some students have, which may be around environmental issues, maybe around that they want to see that their teachers are looking at their work, are grading it themselves. They often are writing that work with their teacher in mind and don't want to think it's just being done through AI. So I think that it's very important that we reassure students and inform them of the benefits. And I think one clear benefit I would highlight is around biases, that all human beings, teachers as human beings, will have both conscious and unconscious biases regarding different students. And the AI wouldn't do that. So they may get fairer marking through if AI is involved. If their teachers are not so overworked, they may have more time to support them in the whole learning process. So I think those communications and explaining to students the benefits for them in using AI is a very important part of the process. And we have certainly seen some definite benefits coming out so far. There is definitely evidence, and from the feedback we've had from people in the pilot, that it is reducing workloads. Something that, I remember as a student myself how frustrating it was waiting for sometimes 2 or 3 months for some slower lecturers to return my work to me, that it makes it much easier for teachers and academics to grade work quickly and get it back to students in a quicker turnaround time. The reliability of grading, and something that I look at again and again when uploading assignments into TeacherMatic, and I often upload the same assignments on different days, is that the grading reliability is remarkably good. It tends to give a very similar grade for the same assignment when you upload it at different times. The validity and accuracy of grading, the evidence so far seems to be certainly at entry level up to level 4. The AI grading through TeacherMatic is very accurate. There seems to be some difference of opinion in some of our university staff where they're saying at level 5 and above, some are still saying the grades are accurate, whereas some are saying perhaps TeacherMatic is a little bit generous. And we are looking to do some more work and calibrating that over the next few months. So I'm going to now demonstrate to you the advanced feedback generator. We are running a few minutes late on this, but we've got time to catch up. So don't worry, Jax and Pete, in terms of you've still got a full complement to talk shortly. So the advanced feedback generator is now available on TeacherMatic. And it has some similarities to the original feedback generator, and I'm just going to go through the whole process here. So to start off with, you click on Add Assignment, and this is quite similar to the feedback generator one. So I'm going to do one on welding PPE. So first, we can give a title in there. You say, how am I going to give the assignment details, and I'm going to upload an assignment brief here and find my assignment brief and upload that. And then the top submission, now a little bit different here, where you have to select either text-based or graphic handwritten work. And if you want the full functionality of the new generator, text-based work is best. So word process, PDFs. And then a little bit of a difference here. What feedback mode do you want? And normally you would select both of these, but if you're doing handwritten, you can't select the second one. So do you want the usual advisory, formative or summative feedback? And select the annotated PDF, which is an important new feature of this. And then because I've selected advisory, formative and summative, I've got the choices that we had before, whether we want formative feedback, summative feedback, advisory feedback, etc. And I'm selecting detailed formative feedback, addressing the learner as you. How do we want the work to be graded? Now here you can upload a rubric, you can use the unit specification, you can say don't grade the work, we want feedback only, or we can select a grading scale, and that's what I'm going to do here. And then we've got a wide range of grading scales. This is a BTEC type assignment, so I'm going to put in a BTEC scale. Let it know what level you want. So England, Wales, Northern Ireland, this is a level 3 assignment. And if you're based in Scotland, you can go select Scotland, have the Scottish levels. And then I'm going to save that, and that will create the assignment. And you'll see that is now there with 0 submissions. Now, if I want to then add some submissions to this assignment, I click on submissions, and I can either drag and drop student work onto there, or I can click upload file. And here are 3 assignments that I wish to upload. I've selected those, and those are now processing. Okay, so while that's happening, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes normally. I'm going to show you some other ones that have been done already. So this is a university, first year university assignment that I've already put on there and marked the assignments. So what TeacherMatic does, once it has processed them, as before, you can view feedback on an assignment. And so it writes that kind of detailed feedback. And so you see Ethics Essay 1, it's giving a suggested grade of 78. Now, just to demonstrate, so that was uploaded 3 days ago, and I also uploaded it, that same essay, about an hour ago. And you see it's giving a grade of 75, so extremely close in the grading. But the real magical thing, and I compliment Richard and Ollie and the whole team on what they're doing here, is this PDF part of it. So what TeacherMatic is doing, a bit like the old-fashioned way of how we would write on our students' assignments with our pens back in my day when I used to mark, is giving feedback actually onto the assignment directly. So if I click on the purple highlighted bit, TeacherMatic has written some detailed feedback on that initial introduction sentence. And the teacher can then, if they don't like that feedback, they can delete it. They can add further to it and edit it. And if you do add anything, it's important you click save at the moment, but that will auto save in a few weeks' time. And you can also add your own feedback. So you can highlight some text and add your own feedback to that. So that is the key sort of features of the new feedback generator. And if I go back to the assignments, you'll see those 3 that I've just uploaded are now all fully marked. Okay, so just a little bit about what's coming next. That we are looking to develop a link for students so that you will be able to share with your students so they can get their work pre-marked. We are looking to put in some admin settings so it will ensure that the teacher must do maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 edits on the PDF before they can download it and share it with the students. So that's sort of forcing that human in the loop hybrid marking. We are looking perhaps at some point in doing something around plagiarism detection. And part of the reason I'm keen to do this is that some of the products that are doing plagiarism detection are also offering an AI detection service. And there's a lot of evidence, and someone has asked about AI detection, that automated AI detection just doesn't work. And I had some very concerning conversations with some of our customers at DigiFest over the last few days, where they're saying that students are being accused of cheating when they haven't cheated, and staff are taking too seriously that a product that is saying it's detecting plagiarism has detected detected AI use where the student hasn't used AI. And so I think we have to be very careful about that. And hopefully down the line, to improve workflows, we will be able to look at how we can do some integration with the LEs. So, right, I'm now going to hand over to Pete Salt. And Pete, you've got 10 minutes, so we are running over slightly. And Jack, don't worry, you've still got your full slot as well. So over to you, Pete.
Thank you very much. Am I coming through okay? I've not had a chance to test my mic. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, can hear you fine.
Perfect, cool. Wonderful. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Sorry, I had to think there. Nearly said morning. It must be Friday. Apologies, it's been a long week. We've had an Ofsted in, so yeah, very much looking forward to the weekend, as I'm sure everyone is. So Peter asked me to give basically a bit of an overview of the journey that we've had at West Nottinghamshire College in kind of connection with this AI pilot. So I suppose just to give a bit of context. So I work as a teaching and learning coach for digital, and I sit within the quality and standards team. So when this kind of first came to us in terms of this opportunity, we kind of discussed which kind of area we felt would probably benefit the most from this. And we decided on we've got lots of different provision, apprenticeships, BTEC vocationals, but we've also got A levels as well. And so we decided that A levels would be a good sort of place to maybe aim this. So we started with that, and we kind of pretty much opened it out to everyone. And it's obviously really interesting listening to kind of Tom and Peter talk about that, I suppose, a little bit of resistance towards that AI use. And I think it comes from, a logical place. I think sometimes people are worried about protecting their time. So even if you are turning around and saying to people, the point of this is to sort of try and see if we can help reduce that workload. I think, there are concerns around that. So we did meet some resistance with that. But we managed to sort of focus it and narrow it down to kind of a couple of curriculum areas within those sort of the A-level provision. And then I think then it became a case of, people were sort of happy to be involved to a certain extent. But it was this idea of, even though we were trying to reduce the workload, there was this obvious need to kind of almost make the workload a little bit more intense for a little bit, sort of to boost the workload. So I was actually talking to Peter about this not long ago, and he introduced me to a parable called the woodman's dilemma, which is about this idea that the woodman's chopping the wood, and his axe is blunt, and he knows that he needs to go and get it to sharpen it, so that he can then obviously cut down more trees, but he says he hasn't got time to do it. So it was a little bit around that area. And so I think for me and my team, it was very much about trying to support that and give those people confidence that it would ultimately sort of go in the right direction. And yeah, it's taken a while. I mean, I think we probably at that point we had about 8 different tutors that were interested in it, and we kind of then got down to a point where those people again were sort of throwing up these concerns. So in the end, it's actually gone down to a much smaller number. I think we're at 3 now. And I went to Tom and just explain, is this going to be all right? Because we've only got a few people that are really kind of wanting to be involved in this now. And he very kindly explained to me that they're really looking just for feedback from people that are really invested and wanting to have a good go at doing this. So yeah, that seemed obviously the right way to go with that. And so we've been working really closely with those individuals on their particular courses. And yes, there have been barriers. So one of the things that I didn't even consider not working with that particular area is part of the way that they assess learners within that particular area is that they need to have them handwrite a lot of their information, and sometimes this information, like when they do these progress checks, it can be 16 pages long. And we looked at the different feedback generators on TeacherMatic, and there was one where they'd introduced this kind of academic year, which allowed you to upload, I think, 5 sort of scanned in images or documents. but not 16. And actually, you can look at like paid licenses of things like ChatGPT and or Copilot, and I don't think you can upload 16 different documents because of the amount of data that's in there. So it wasn't a TeacherMatic barrier. It was just a barrier in terms of how we would actually kind of you put that data and have something check it from an assessment point of view. So we couldn't do that. We couldn't do it in that way. We couldn't do it with a prog check, unfortunately. So again, that just, again, it's not about the problems, it's about the solutions. And so what we landed on was that it would essentially be used for kind of formative feedback for homework, where rather than all these like umpteen different questions that they ask at these progress checks, they would just break it down into smaller chunks. And so they're still handwriting it. They're still doing it that way because and they're really keen to keep them writing it, which makes sense because they're building up that resilience for when they do take their exams, so that they can get used to like writing it out instead of typing it on a computer. But yeah, we put those in, and it seems to be going quite well. So it's like Peter mentioned earlier, it's can be very, very accurate. We're using it for formative, but obviously as it was demonstrated earlier, you feed it the information, you feed it the grading specs. We've kind of tweaked a little bit. So there's the rubric generator in TeacherMatic as well, and so we put it into that first, just so that we can really refine those grading specs into specifically what we want for those particular areas, and that's worked quite well. And so yeah, so we've had quite a lot of success with that. It's quite small, but in terms of like the people that are using it. But the hope for us is that we can then kind of show others the success that we've had on that level, and that will just sort of ripple out to everybody else. And just even the stereotypical fact of hey, they look really happy. What's their deal? And it's because they're using the system and they've got a bit more free time to focus on things like their kind of their session plans and stuff. So yeah, so it's gone really well with that respect. I think it's gone even better since they've been introduced, and I think it is literally. I think Richard was showing us it just about 2.5 weeks ago, the advanced feedback generator. So that's obviously quite new as well. And I think if I remember correctly, I met with Richard on Wednesday and was quite excited to meet with a team on Friday to show them this. But what was really cool was that they'd already found it. So that they'd already kind of come across it and they were already using it. And that was brilliant because obviously it meant that we had tutors that were obviously really enthusiastic about using what TeacherMatic was offering, and they'd start to play around with it a little bit already. So that was really cool. And yeah, so they're playing around with that now and using that to good effect. It's, as I say, as it's been spoken about quite a bit, it's definitely much kind of user friendly, just because it's got all of the different briefs in there. If you've got multiple different assessments, and then you can go back into it and you can kind of keep revisiting it. So it remembers that stuff, which is really useful for the tutors. So yeah, so that's come across really, really well in that journey. I think probably in terms of what I've sort of taken away from that is that there was definitely a need for me, certainly at this point where we're introducing it to colleagues, is to kind of help supporting that confidence, let them know that it was very much about wanting to make sure that we gave them time to be able to focus on our other areas. And again, I go back to what I was saying earlier about teachers being protective of their time. So it was very much about that. And I definitely need someone to lead it as well. I mean, maybe that sounds silly. Maybe, of course you need someone to lead it, but lead it in the sense that people, you can't just because this is doing some fantastic things. There's almost an element where you think, well, people will just see it and they'll just go like, cool, that sounds really good. We'll use that and we'll use that. I can definitely see that working for the sessions. And I think that there might have been a small amount of school of thought that would be the case. But you've really got to sort of drive it forwards. Again, especially at the kind of the early stages of it. And the hope is, obviously we're quite early still in the process, but the hope is that, again, because we've had these people jump in and engage with this, that others will see that, and it'll kind of spiral out in different directions, and then we won't have to really have people leading on it anymore. We'll just, we'll still need people to go in and support, but we'll have it where people just support each other and find the best ways to sort of work it for their particular areas. So yeah, I think that's it from me. Just because, as I say, Pete just asked me to talk about the journey. I don't know if anyone's got any questions. I don't know if we've got time for quick questions, or Pete, you want me to talk to anything else whilst I was here?
No, I think that's great. I think you've covered all the key points, Pete. So much appreciated. Are you
Fantastic.
happy to pop your email address in the chat? There's no
Yeah,
specific
yeah, sure.
questions, but in case anybody wants to email you a question. So, Pete works at West Notts, and if you want to talk to someone actually in a college who's using this live, there's been a few general questions, but what's good to see is and my colleagues have been answering all the questions as they've been coming in. So thanks very much for Richard and Ollie. Okay, we're a little bit behind time, but don't worry, those of you that are still to speak, you're still going to get your full 15 minutes each. And Richard, we can look at the Viva Voice at the end, because if you've got time then. And so if I could hand over to Jax now, who's going to talk about coaching. And sorry, it's a little bit late, Jax, but you got your 15 minutes of fame still, so don't worry.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to come on here and talk about the new coaching generator, which I have to say Richard did a wonderful job on. He was definitely the brains behind the architecture. But what I brought to it was some of the rationale, the psychology behind coaching, and especially coaching within education settings. So before I kind of go into today, I just wanted to flag that I did a webinar with ESAM where we deep dived the rationale behind this generator. So if anyone wants to see that, that's separate. For today, I thought I'd take a different angle before I demonstrate the generator and actually talk a little bit more about, in practice, how I've seen coaching work and when it doesn't, and how the generator can therefore be really effective. So I hope that helps you to understand the generator and then be able to use it and put it into practice. So bear with me while I just share my screen. There we go. So first of all, how did I end up working with TeacherMatic, and what is my experience to bring to the table? Well, I'm a chartered coaching psychologist and a mental skills trainer. What I specialize in is that personal development of emerging adults. So that's 16 to 29 age group. It's a developmental phase where the prefrontal cortex is still under construction. There's a lot of exploration, a lot of identity, exploration, and lots of uncertainty and lots going on at that age. And coaching can be a really effective tool for helping to build that readiness for adulthood and the resilience and confidence needed to transition from education into the workplace. So within that, I work a lot with colleges, with businesses, and with individuals, all with this viewpoint of trying to increase the effectiveness of coaching. So we see coaching being used increasingly, which is fantastic. And I just really want to make sure that we're bringing that understanding of how to bring the best out of coaching and upskill people in that and all of that. And that's how I ended up meeting with TeacherMatic and working with them to enhance their coaching generator. So I promise we're going to get to that, and we're going to showcase how that works so that you can go away and try it out for yourself. But as I say before that, I just wanted to explore some of the context behind the work I've done. So I've done quite a bit of work coaching in schools and colleges in various formats and ways before TeacherMatic's generator was available. So this is me reflecting back and thinking how it could have really helped actually to save time, to prepare, to help other people do these kind of things. So in schools and colleges, it can be a really useful tool for general well-being and performance for students and staff. In particular, I've used this as a whole group approach, so working with whole year groups or whole cohorts, or in staff development. And there's a real reason for that. Sometimes we do lots of individual intervention, and actually there's a real place for this collective experience. So a big thing for me was, for a long time, was exam preparation and preparation for making big decisions about your future. And recognizing that collective and universal experience that we all go through, some of the challenges we can all face in those circumstances. So coaching whole classes together was really valuable for normalizing the stresses, normalizing the pressures. But then on an individual basis, it can be really good for specific skills, so development of specific things, such as staying calm in exams or recovering from a failure or not getting into the university you really wanted to get into. So specific situations, coaching can provide an alternative lens and help people to really voice what they're feeling and process any of the emotions, and then move from that reflective phase into sort of setting some actions, or how am I going to learn from this and what can I carry forward. It's also been really great, actually, for building a culture of coaching and a culture of this collective experience. Doing some work with parents, actually running parent sessions and helping to show parents how to bring coaching into their conversations at home. Now, that might sound a bit strange, our parents being coaches, but really that's what's great about tools like the generator that can help us, is we can equip anybody to just have really great questions up their sleeve, or an understanding of how to create an environment in which you can have a development conversation. So, you know, parents instinctively will jump in and try and fix their child's issue. And sometimes teachers, especially when teachers are time poor, they're trying to help everybody. By nature, teachers are compassionate people that want to help and support. But when you're time poor, then that instinct can often mean jumping in and just fixing something because it's easier. So actually having some frameworks, some structures, or some great questions in your mind means that coaching conversations can happen on the fly. They can happen over the dinner table at home, or they can happen in the corridor or during form period. They don't have to be structured mentoring sessions. So yes, there's some really great ways we can bring the insights from coaching, and especially into schools and education, where we know that our young people are kind of neurologically under construction, and they may need some guidance and help to kind of build those skills and build those ways. So that's one thing that I've used coaching for. And the generator, when we get onto that, I'll be able to talk back to this as examples of how we can then use the generator. And another way is within early careers, really developing skills for how we're going to be in the workplace. It's a huge thing. I don't know how many people on this call would have experience with apprentices, but in particular, when we look at supporting apprentices, that's a huge area where they're juggling two identities. They're juggling studying and working, and also trying to shift from a stage of life where there's support in place and they can be that inner child. They can have adults in their world take clear guidance and make decisions and help them structure their world, into a workplace where they're expected to do those things for themselves, to have that self-leadership, to manage their day, manage their time, manage their energy, and to collaborate with others and all these things. So there's a lot going on, and I hear and I work with lots of employers where they really talk about the importance of developing those skills and developing that professional identity and those inner resources linked to resilience and confidence. So coaching can be a fantastic tool for doing that. So in particular in my work, I come across issues such as being just really overwhelmed by the expectation they either place on themselves or that they feel is being placed on them by being in such a large organization, for example, or sometimes especially with degree apprenticeships where they've been so competitive to get onto, there can be a high level of expectation placed that this has to work out, and that can be stifling. And sometimes coaching can really unlock some of that stuckness and that feeling of restriction. And other things, performance anxiety, that's a big one. We see that across all ages, having mind blank going into exams, not being able to perform as they know they can when under pressure. And I see this as well in managers and educators dealing with these pressures as well. So coaching can be used across the board. And I also find it particularly useful for busting Gen Z stereotypes. I'm a big advocate for recognizing the psychology and biology of what's going on at this age and starting to realize and normalize and accept the full range of human experience and human emotion. And when you start to do that, you start to realize some of these stereotypical things that we see we can actually explain them, we can actually understand them. So coaching has a really fantastic place. However, before we go into the generator, it's really important for me to also showcase when it's not effective. And that's really important, because when we were looking at this generator and how to design it, leading on to what Pete said, this was absolutely about time saving. We want to make sure that we are helping teachers, educators to have a tool that's going to help save time. We weren't creating an AI that was going to be the coach. And that's really, really important to say. So in that as well, we want it to be used responsibly and ethically to make sure that the right support's getting to the right people in the right way. So coaching is not something that we want to encourage people to use when the learner, the student, whoever actually does have a knowledge gap or a skills gap. If something's missing information-wise, then of course we need to teach that and provide ways to learn that. It's also really important that the environment that person in is not a toxic environment, because coaching relies on a safe place and a relationship. It's a relational thing. AI is not taking the relationship away. We still need judgment in place. We still need gut instincts, intuition, all those things, and they only come to life when the environment itself is safe. It also isn't effective if the person needs clinical support. So if they are diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or I will say it would need a specialist coach. So for general coaching and general integration of the coaching as per the generator, we're putting a little disclaimer in to say it's not, not for use in clinical settings. And coaching also doesn't work unless someone is willing and wants to participate in coaching. Again, because it's relational. So it's really important to have that relationship in place. And then the last one is the one I spoke into a lot during the webinar I did earlier in the week, which is about having theoretical flex to accommodate the individual in front of you. So you'll see when I next go onto the generator that there's 3 options for using the generator. And one of them is to use a structured coaching model like the GROW model. So some people, if you've been on a coaching course or a leadership development course that's included coaching, you might be familiar with coaching models, and they're fantastic for providing a simple structure to help you to work through a flow of a conversation. So for example, with GROW, to first start with exploring the person's goal and then their reality and then the options open to them and their willingness to take those options. So a nice structure to work through. However, with young people, they don't always necessarily have a capacity to think in that way, to be able to conceptualize their goals. So sometimes we need to use a bit of psychological scaffolding and help people work through things. And so sometimes a structured model might not be best suited to a young person in that way, or at least if you are going to use one, be able to really see the person in front of you and recognize, perhaps this person can't conceptualize a goal. That doesn't mean I can't use the GROW model. I just need to spend a little bit more time with them, helping them to formulate what it is they're trying to work towards. So yeah, really important to note that. Okay, so that was a real fast overview, so I can give a bit of context behind the generator design. If there's any questions, I'm really open to talking about coaching in general and again, bringing coaching psychology and emerging adulthood understanding. Please get in touch. Anything to do with that. I'm going to stop sharing this and jump onto the generator. Hang on. Different tab. Okay, so the generator, what you've all come here to see. So you'll see on here, there is still the original version, which is being phased out. So if you search coaching prompts, please check in that you're using the most up-to-date version. I don't know when that's going. It says March. It'll go soon. So this is the one we would like to use. So we're going to use this now. And as you'll see, that disclaimer's right there, just to make sure that we're highlighting that this is, this is just an advisory and to inspire you and help you prepare. It's not taking over your human role. Okay, so first things, regardless of which of the 3 options we're going to use on this generator, we're going to start by telling it who we're working with and what we think the topic is going to be about. What do we think the conversation is going to be about? So for this example, because the first option is the use of a coaching model like GROW, and I just explained very, very briefly that that's maybe not best suited with young people, I'm going to demonstrate this one as a teacher. And we're going to imagine that we're talking to this, we're going to have a coaching session with this teacher about, there we go, developing confidence in handling challenging behavior. sure we could all do with a bit of that. Now, here's where we get to pick out of our three. So there's three options for using the generator: using a model, using a style, or letting the AI do the work and let the AI help you figure out what you want to do. So for this one, we're going to use a model. And because earlier in the week when I did the webinar, we used Grow, for this one, I'm going to opt to use the Clear model. But you'll see there's several options here. So if you are familiar with one, please use it. It's going to help you by inspiring some questions and some ideas for how to bring that model to life. So there we go. Now, all of the options allow you to add any background information. So if you've got a file or previous conversation or some data, depending on the relevance to the topic, you can upload that. I don't have any for this, so I'm just going to generate it as is. So here, as I say, we're going to look at how we could have a conversation with a teacher to help them develop confidence in handling challenging behaviour. And we're going to try and use a structured conversation using the coaching model Clear. And we're just going to let it do its thing. Doesn't take too long. Okay, here we go. So here we go, using this model. It's going to clarify the model and how it's being used. And in this case, it's going to work through the model and give you some specific inspiration around questions that you could ask in line with that model. So again, if you knew about a topic that often comes up in conversation, you could play around with this, you could have a look, and you could almost bank these as inspiration questions so that next time something came up, you had some readiness to do that. That's a really great thing. Or you could use this, print it out, and have it as a prepared thing for a more structured meeting. And just at the bottom there, some general things to help you close the session off and make sure that it was useful and helpful and well received. So that's one option for using the coaching generator. The second option, I'm going to clear this. We're going to go with the option of a learner. We can say 16, that's great. They'll probably be doing GCSEs or something. And for this one, I'm going to use the example I spoke about that is really relevant, using coaching to help people prepare for exams and think about how they're going to stay calm and give themselves the best chance of performing at their best in the exam. So for this now, I'm going to choose the second option. I'm going to choose a coaching style. And this is where I'm going to get to introduce to you 4 different options, plus the option of describing in your own words. So bearing in mind what I spoke about, that ideally coaching is goal-directed and collaborative, and we're not telling somebody what to do. We want them to come up with their own solutions. You'd think that in that scenario, then we must always have it as this non-directive approach. But the reality is, when we're working with young people, they do sometimes need a bit of direction. So we have this option of doing coaching, but in a style where it's very clear the coach is an expert. So option number 1 is a directive coaching style. We're seeing the coach as an expert and the coach being able to provide a clear structure and a pathway towards a specific solution or goal. So an example actually might be, if we were wanting to do a little bit of a coaching conversation around attendance, I can't imagine many students are going to highlight that as their own personal goal, but we could bring that as a specific thing we want to work on with somebody. The next option is non-directive, the much more traditional coach style of the coach is a facilitator, enabling self-discovery, asking really powerful, great open-ended questions and really listening carefully. But then in education in particular, there's sometimes a need for a much more collaborative approach, almost like a side-by-side partnership to say, let's figure this out together. And that can really work. And actually, that's the one I'm going to select for this example, because preparing for exams is something where sometimes it can be really great just to work alongside a student and help them map out how they're going to approach it. So that can be a really good one. The last one is the minimal guidance, is seeing the coach as a sounding board. So sometimes if somebody's really self-motivated, they know exactly what they want to do, how they want to do it, but they could just do with somebody to sense check it. That's a really good one. Or you can just describe in your own words how you think you want to handle it. So I'm going to pick, I think for this one, I'm going to go collaborative. Again, we could upload information if we wanted, and let's generate that one. So as a reminder, we've got a learner, potentially going for their GCSEs. They're 16. And we've opted for a style and chosen to see ourselves working in partnership with them, just jointly trying to come up with a way of approaching the exams that's going to help them to stay calm. Here we go. So in this one, again, it's just emphasizing, helping you to remember your role in the conversation. And then it's going to guide you through a bit of a structure. So less inspiration for questions and more guidance around the strategy of the conversation with a little bit of guidance on questions. So I won't read it all through, but you can just have a little look at that. That's really clear, really helpful. And again, at the end, just a few check-in questions before you go. So a different use of the coaching generator, but really, really helpful. And then the last one I wanted to showcase, we're going to go, I was specifically asked the other day if I could do an example today of how to help an apprentice. So we're going to click other, who am I working with, other, and we're going to say an apprentice. And this meeting is going to be about helping them to manage their work and their study responsibilities. Now for this, we're going to say, I'm not going to use a model and I'm not going to use a style. I don't really know what I want to do. So I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to let the AI do all the work for me. So because of that, we need to give a little bit extra detail. So it's going to guide you through. You can describe briefly where the meeting will be. Now, I did this as if it was actually me because I do apprentice support. So I said online. A lot of my work is online. That's going to help the AI to understand the setting and offer any guidance around how to create a welcoming and psychologically safe environment. I've said I'm an external coach and I'm working to support the college apprentices. And I've explained the why behind the meeting. That helps to tell the AI what the person's motivation is and how motivated they are towards the goal or towards the topic. So I just said, look, the apprentice is struggling. They need some support to build their confidence back up. And they want to get some new things to try. They want to do that. We've said it's going to be 60 minutes. And actually, this is a really interesting one. What's the plan for this meeting and any follow-up? So is this a one-off meeting or an informal conversation, or is it actually part of a structured set of sessions? So again, I just mimicked what I typically do and said, well, I'm going to go with 3 sessions, over 6 weeks. And let's see what it's come up with. So again, we're looking at apprenticeships. We're imagining that we're going to help support them in their dual roles and build some confidence. And we're seeing this as part of a series of sessions online. Okay. So again, it's identified that in this situation that they might need some additional guidance and structured feedback, given the nature of the issue. So we can do these bits. So it helps again with that structure, that guidance, offering some set tools to help them manage like time management techniques, but then really important to bring in some collaborative problem solving. So you are still doing that coaching piece of working together and working on some specific tools. Bit of follow-up and some general questions. So I hope you can see through this demonstration that there's 3 clear ways of using this coach generator. And actually the best thing to do is to go out and play with it. Just go and have a go and yeah, hopefully you'll find it really, really useful. So I can stick around for 5 minutes or so, but then I need to jump off. So if anyone's got any questions, please let me know.
Right, well, thank you very much, Jax. Do you want to put your email address into the chat? So if anyone's got any questions, they can email you. And please recommend, do recommend the coaching tools to anybody in your college or school or university that's involved in coaching. And I could also say we'd strongly recommend talking to Jax and perhaps getting her into some training with your coaches. We've had a great experience working with her and the expertise that she's got there. So, Jax, if you pop your contact details into the chat, then people can follow that up with you. Okay, we are running a little bit behind schedule, I'm afraid. So I'm going to hand over to Ian now. You've still got 15 minutes, Ian, and then Esam, you'll have 15 minutes at the end. And we'll do the open chat from 3 o'clock. If anyone wants to hang around and chat with the team, we'll all hang about. So over to you, Ian. And thank you very much, Jax.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Jax. Good to see everybody. Well, I can't see everybody, but good to be here and to be part of the community webinar. I'm from Avallain, which is part of the TeacherMatic family of products, and the company that is now working very closely with TeacherMatic. And we thought it might be a good idea just to spend 10 minutes looking at what our ambitions are for TeacherMatic going forward, and the sort of wider suite of products that are on offer from Avallain, and how TeacherMatic sits within those products. So that you get some idea of the direction of travel and where our ambitions may take us. So I'm just going to share my screen, and I'm going to start my slideshow. Hold on a sec. So hopefully you can now see a slide, the TeacherMatic family. So as I say, those of you who are particularly eagle-eyed may have noticed that the logo for TeacherMatic changed with a little substrap at the Avallain Group in 2024. And that's because we joined forces with Avallain, which is a global edtech provider. And Avallain brings with it all sorts of possibilities for the future of TeacherMatic, and the journey that you can take from the home that is TeacherMatic. So let me just explain a little bit about Avallain first, and then I'm going to go on to explain a little bit about that family of products and where it might take us. So Avallain's been around for a long time. You may not know it, but it's been around since 2002, so a quarter of a century, which in EdTech is a long time. I was, in fact, Avallain's first client back in 2002 when I was heading up technology for Macmillan Publishers. And Avallain since then has grown to be one of the key providers to the publishing industry, to the educational publishing industry. And that's because Avallain is focused on content creation tools, always has been right from the beginning. And that, of course, is one of the reasons that Avallain saw and loved TeacherMatic back in 2024. So Avallain focused on content creation tools, but also has a whole range of products, a product suite, I should say, that covers the whole EdTech value chain, all the way from content creation to learning delivery. And TeacherMatic sits really well in that, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. And that technology is being used both by publishers now, but also by many institutions, from HE through to language training institutions to K-12 institutions and many more. We're also a key player in educational Gen AI research and development, partly through our Avallain lab. We won't have time to talk about that today, but I'm sure that could be wrapped into another community webinar at a different stage. And as I mentioned, we joined forces with TeacherMatic back in 2024 to deepen our AI content creation capabilities. We were doing some Gen AI content creation in our technologies, but we were really excited by what TeacherMatic was doing, the pace at which it was doing it, and the fact that it was founded in real educator practice. Already by then, tens of thousands of educators working in TeacherMatic. So the by educators for educators strap that TeacherMatic was using at the time was really true. And in a field that was moving very fast, generative AI, there was a shortage of real practice that educational technology providers like us could really tap into. Anyway, so TeacherMatic was a new partner for us in 2024. And the first thing we did was we looked at TeacherMatic and we thought, well, this is so fantastic for general education settings, but it would also be fabulous to have other TeacherMatics. for other segments that aren't so that have slightly different needs. So we focus first on language teaching, and that we produced the first language teaching AI tool set. We did that by taking TeacherMatic and working with some big names in language teaching, people like the British Council and International House and Nile and others, English UK, and looking at the tool sets and saying, what is really useful in language teaching and what is not. And that's resulted in a much more focused set of generators, 55 generators instead of the 150 or so with which you're probably familiar. Those 55 generators are very focused on the needs of language educators. So there are some specialist generators like adapt your content used in a sentence, exam prep generators for the language training exams. But there's also features like tailoring for the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the CEFR. So you can tailor your outputs to the CEFR. And then also methodologies, for instance, communicative language teaching and lexical approach that language teachers are commonly using. So if you are working in language teaching, or you in your institution, there are language teachers, and you'd like to take a look at that language teaching edition, very much worth going on our website, and you can get a free trial of that, or get in touch with us and we can run a demo and perhaps a trial. But so that was the first thing we did. And then we were also thinking, okay, how does TeacherMatic fit really well within the rest of what we do? And there are two core products that Avallain already has. One is Avallain Author, the one on the left, which is a content creation tool set for creating interactive learning experiences, whether that's lessons, individual lessons, assignments, assessments, or full courses. And that's being used by most of the big international educational publishers based out of Europe to create their interactive learning journeys, but also by many institutions that want to create highly interactive learning journeys. So we have Author. We also have Magnet, which is a seamlessly linked learning platform that is highly configurable and enables institutions to deliver those interactive learning journeys in a seamless way, although Author is also used with lots of other different learning platforms. Magnet is our own. And then we have TeacherMatic. So we have the question, okay, how do we bring all of this together? And how do we make this into something that's really useful for TeacherMatic clients as well? So before I get on to how we've done that, very quickly, what are Avallain Author and Avallain Magnet in a slightly more detail? So Avallain Author, as I say, is a content creation tool set, but for interactive content, and it's intended for institutions and publishers. And the things that make it different are not least that it creates a huge number of different interactive interaction types and different validation flows through content. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but to give you an idea, 58 different interaction types with thousands of different options for how you can create journeys through that content. So Author is very powerful and is used by many institutions and publishers to create these interactive experiences. And then we have the Magnet, which is the learning platform. And that learning platform has a lot within it, like the ability to create configurable interfaces for different types of learner, and flexible content creation tied into it, and lots of other nice features. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now. So here we have the those two products, Avallain Author and Avallain Magnet. And we've got to ask, okay, where does TeacherMatic sit in this set of capabilities? Because there's a big grid of capabilities between Avallain Author and Avallain Magnet. And really the focus for TeacherMatic is this pane here, which is content creation for teachers, which Magnet was already doing to some extent. But with TeacherMatic, we get all sorts of other possibilities. And what TeacherMatic does sits very well alongside what Magnet Create does, which is the content creation tool set that was already sitting inside Magnet. Magnet Create is a facility, a tool set for creating interactive content. So teachers can create interactive lessons and tests and resources and assign them to their students. Whereas TeacherMatic, of course, is great for the planning, the preparation, the handout materials that teachers also need. So Magnet provides that, Magnet Create provides that interactive dimension. So just very quickly to look at Magnet Create. Magnet Create is has a simple interface for teachers to create different types of interaction, different types of assignable lessons and quizzes and resources they can assign to their class and see automated feedback and marking and so on. Now, Magnet was created without Gen AI, so it predated generative AI. But of course, we're interested in building in generative AI, and TeacherMatic is the perfect partner for Magnet Create. So Magnet Create handles all the interactivity. TeacherMatic has already thought through all of the generative AI, the whole concept of generators for creating content. And so bringing these two things together, of course, in the short to medium future, will enable our TeacherMatic clients to create interactive resources and create assignments and assessments that can be set for their learners. So very interesting possibilities for us. So we have this ambition of creating this partnership between Magnet Create and TeacherMatic. And then once we've delivered that capability, of course, there are all these other things that are offered by Magnet and by Author that can be made available to our TeacherMatic clients. So there's a huge amount of possibility for our TeacherMatic clients to start to use very powerful learning platform capabilities and also content creation capabilities if you have ambitions for creating interactive courseware to serve your entire program. So those are the directions of travel for TeacherMatic. We're creating versions of TeacherMatic to suit specific needs like language training. And we're working to think about the future direction of generative AI and where it might take our clients, where it might take you in terms of your needs to deliver more and more interactive journeys for your learners, but also to deliver more complex content. That it's not an immediate need. We know that from consulting with this great community of TeacherMatic, but it is becoming a need, and we can see it, and we're planning for it. So I think that was about all I was going to say. I was trying to keep it very brief because I know we're overrunning. I hope that is useful. Any questions, Peter, that I can answer immediately?
Right, well, there's a request for your PowerPoint. I've added your email address in there. So, and so if anyone has any further questions for Ian, please email him directly. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Ian. And I hope you can all see the exciting new directions that TeacherMatic is going through our partnership with Avallain. So I'm going to finally hand over to my colleague Isam. Sorry, it's a bit late, Isam, but you've still got nearly 15 minutes to talk about this amazing 3-year journey that initially the 4 founders, Isam, Ollie, Jeff, and myself, and then we've picked up many more travellers along the way with us. So over to you, Isam.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you everyone for your fantastic presentations. I always enjoy these community webinars because, including for myself, by the way, I find out what's coming next, believe it or not. So And the work around this advanced feedback generator and the Jisc pilot and the collaboration with Jacqueline Weeks on the coaching generator are really exciting examples of how TeacherMatic is evolving. So I thought I'd use the next few minutes to reflect briefly on the TeacherMatic journey. So when we first launched, which is about 3 years ago, by the way, we only had around 15 generators, and today the platform has grown to over 150 plus generators or tools. And these have been developed through a co-design model with educators, shaped by your feedback and classroom experience. So I think one of the things that makes TeacherMatic different from these general purpose AI tools is the way educators interact with the platform. So most of these language models rely on open prompting, which assumes educators know exactly what to ask and how to structure prompts, almost like becoming prompt engineers. So TeacherMatic takes a different approach. So instead of open prompting, the platform uses structured generators built around pedagogical workflows. So these generators guide educators through inputs such as learning objectives, learner needs, and curriculum context. So what I think is really beneficial is that it scaffolds professional practice. And for newly qualified teachers, these prompts can also act as a form of professional guidance. So since launching the platform, we've seen significant adoption across the sector. And today, TeacherMatic is being used by over 350 organizations, and 70% of them are within the further education sector. And globally, we have over 65,000 educators using the platform. And you know, what's particularly encouraging is that much of this growth has come through collaboration with the sector itself. And as I said, when we first launched, we had only 15 generators, and they were mainly focused on the core pain points in teaching, like lesson planning and quizzes. But through constant feedback from yourselves, the platform has expanded rapidly. So today we have over 150 generators covering everything from assessment to employability to leadership. And nearly every single one of these tools came from a real request from yourselves, in the community. And another thing that's evolved is that TeacherMatic is no longer just for teachers. So we started to see demand across organizations. So quality teams wanted things like observation reports and coaching templates, and career teams wanted, things like interview materials and employability, and leadership teams wanted it for strategic documentation. So the platform gradually expanded to multiple roles within education. And ultimately, the most important thing isn't the number of generators or the number of organizations that we have. It's the impact on educators. And one lecturer, Sarah, has, this quote has just stuck with all of us. And we use it all over our, publicity material, because I really do think it captures what TeacherMatic is about. And it's about giving you your Sunday afternoons back and every evening back. And that's the reality for many educators who spend their evenings and weekends preparing materials. Essentially, we want to remove that workload pressure so that you can focus on what really matters, and that's teaching and supporting learners. So over the last 3 years, TeacherMatic has been primarily supporting you with planning, preparation, and assessment. Things like lesson plans, quizzes, rubrics, and now, feedback. But something we've been reflecting on internally is that many educators currently use TeacherMatic before or after a lesson, rather than during the lesson itself. So the next phase of development is about bringing TeacherMatic into the classroom. So from September, hopefully, we're planning to introduce a new set of tools designed to support live teaching and classroom interaction. And these tools are going to include things like the smart timers, random name generators, group generators, assessment for learning prompts, and other tools that help teachers engage learners during lessons. And this is only phase one of that vision. The goal is to introduce simple tools that teachers can use easily during live delivery in the classroom. And just like the rest of TeacherMatic, the next phases will be shaped by your feedback and how these tools are used in practice. So this is only the very start of the next chapter of TeacherMatic. And as we reflect over the last 3 years, one thing is very, very clear. TeacherMatic wouldn't be where it is today without you, our community. So your ideas, your feedback, your classroom experience has shaped the development of TeacherMatic at every stage. So we want to thank you for being part of this journey. Please keep sharing your feedback, your ideas, and your experiences with us, because that collaboration is what will continue to shape TeacherMatic as we move forward. So thank you very much for being part of this community and continuing to share your ideas and feedback with us. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isam, and thank you to all of the presenters, and thanks for everyone else for coming along today and joining what I think has been an amazing spring community webinar with so much sharing going on, so much great new development that's come in the last few months and that's coming forwards in the next few months as well. And I hope you're all as excited about it as we are.